What are the Bengals' biggest offseason needs and how should they address them? Let's get into it on a Wednesday edition of Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Hi again, everyone, and welcome in to CBT. I'm James Rapien of allbengals.com. This video and all of our videos right now as the offseason rolls on brought to you by Rivertown Inquiry and rivertowninquiry.com. Shout out to Doug and his crew. And let's dive in. By the way, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for the best Bengals coverage here on YouTube. This is an important offseason, as are really every offseason when it comes to having Joe Burrow and the Super Bowl window being open. But what are the Bengals' biggest needs? We've spent time talking about Joe Burrow's extension, T. Higgins' possible extension, all of those things. What are their biggest needs this offseason? And I think naturally, time is a flat circle, as I've said on Locked On Bengals in recent episodes. The offensive line comes to mind, doesn't it? At right tackle, because La'el Collins, well, he is not in good shape right now. He's coming back from an ACL. We'll see when he comes back, when he's 100%. I think it's very optimistic to expect him undergoing surgery in January. Obviously, he tore it on December 24th, but underwent surgery in early January to be ready for the start of training camp or to be ready for the start of the season and to play at a reasonably high level at that point, even if he was ready. We saw what it did with Trey Hopkins coming back from an ACL pretty quickly. He was out there, but he really wasn't out there. And he wasn't the guy that we remembered. And yeah, in the second half of the season was better than the first half, but there's a reason he hasn't been picked up. And part of it is he just never fully recovered from that ACL to play at the level he did prior to that injury. So if you're La'el Collins, you're going to take your time and make sure you get back to that level, and you're not going to rush back. Well, the Bengals don't have time for that. They need to have a right tackle of the present and future on the roster. And so I think that's where it starts. And when you throw in the idea of Jonah Williams in the final year of his contract, I know a lot of people have said, oh, well, Jackson Carman can do what Jonah Williams did for you last year. And while I think Carman exceeded expectations, which were really, really low in the postseason when he came in for an injured Jonah Williams to me is clearly not only the favorite, clearly the starting left tackle on this team. They picked up the fifth-year option for a reason. He played through a dislocated kneecap and didn't miss any snaps the first time he did it. Obviously, it happened again. And so I think it's going to be him, but that is a need because you don't know if he's going to be the long-term answer at left tackle. And at this stage, given his injury history, even though he's only 25 years old, I would say at best it's 50-50, and he has to go out there and show it. But if he goes out there and plays at a really high level, well, then it's going to cost a lot, right? And it's an interesting dilemma for the Bengals. Certainly tackle is a need, and right tackle is the bigger need of the two. And that's why if I was addressing this, I would go in free agency, and I would find the right fit in free agency. And maybe it isn't one of the stars. I mentioned Mike McGlinchey earlier this week on Locked On Bengals, and quite frankly, I don't care if it's Mike McGlinchey. I don't care what the guy's name is. Find someone that can keep Joe Burrow upright. Find someone that can open holes for whatever running back is in the backfield. Find someone that can play at a competent or better level, and then I feel good about that right tackle spot. So you need to find someone, at least a bridge for this season, that can get you to La'el Collins mid-year or give you insurance on the rookie that you draft. And let's talk about the draft, because the 28th overall pick, a lot of people talking offensive line. Let's say they take an offensive lineman. Maybe it's right out of Tennessee. Let's just say it. Are we sure he's going to start? I'm not. And I'm not against taking him or taking an offensive lineman at 28, but I'm also not blinded by just addressing that, especially when the Bengals have other needs. What are they? Well, if offensive line's number one and the right tackle spot, then tight end's got to be number two. They have one tight end on their roster right now, Mitch Wilcox, under contract. Outside of that, it's tough, and tight ends are hard to find, and even if they re-sign Hayden Hurst, tight end is a need. Tight end should be in play at 28, partially because of how good this tight end class is. Dane Brugler, and I wrote about this on All Bengals, has 4 tight ends ranked between his 24th and 30th prospect. I mean, that's Makes a lot of sense. It does. And for a variety of reasons. Obviously, the need part of it. But the other part is how important tight end is to this offense. And I think it's pretty important. And you look at it, whether it's Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame, maybe it's Luke Musgrave, Darnell Washington. And Darnell Washington is, and Joe Goodberry's talked about this, we'll have him on. Obviously, he talked about some of these tight ends on Bengals on the Brain on Tuesday night, but we will get together and be doing at least one pre-draft show for sure. Tight end is deep, but Darnell is like a trench player. He's a guy that's going to help you as a blocker right now. 6'7", huge frame, but could also catch some passes. To me, Michael Mayer makes a lot of sense. And outside of that, Dalton Kincaid is a high-end pass catcher. Maybe that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for a potential Boyd replacement, if they went that route for some reason, I don't know if they will, but the point is there are guys, Washington, Musgrave, obviously Mayer, who's going to be a popular guy. He grew up really close to Cincinnati in northern Kentucky. Dalton Kincaid. There are going to be guys that are mentioned. You can't rule any of the four out. And I'm going to do a separate video on Bijan Robinson because the Texas running back, because it's really interesting to see the takes that have been dropped about him. But tight end would be need number 2. And then after that, I think it's kind of open. And when you look at tight end, I say in an ideal world, you draft one at some point and you take one and sign one in free agency. And then it's open where cornerback, edge, all of these positions, you could use another one. You could use another defensive tackle. You could certainly use another corner. And that's why, to me, when I think about the needs, everyone goes to offensive line. And that's fine. If the right offensive lineman's there at 28, I don't think anyone's arguing. I don't think anyone. I was on the Tyler Linderbaum train last year after the fact that they had signed Ted Karras. I still said, hey, if Tyler Linderbaum's there, take him, because he's going to be a really high-end center, and you can move Karras to guard, and you really feel good about your offensive line moving forward. That said, he didn't make it there, 1. 2, the Bengals picked the right player. And you're going to hear me say this a lot every draft season. Draft players, not positions. Find the right player. Just because it doesn't necessarily line up with the position that you really think they need to address, well, that's okay. But what makes it okay? Because protecting 9, protecting Joe Burrow is huge. So what makes it okay? Addressing it in free agency. Because free agency is before the draft. So if you go in with the 28th pick and you really, really desperately need an offensive lineman, well, that's going to be tough. That's tough sailing. Go in having already addressed your offensive line, having already added a cornerback, a depth corner, so you feel pretty good about that room. Maybe from a wide receiver standpoint, and I think wide receiver is a need as well, speed wide receiver, it's not a great wide receiver class. And so maybe you've addressed that in free agency with taking a flyer on one of these free agent wide receivers. And McCole Hartman would be the one that stands out to me the most from a guy who can take the top off of a defense and complement what you already have. Maybe you go that route and give him a prove-it deal. The point is free agency complements what you do in the draft and vice versa. And when you're taking a player at the 28th spot, it's going to be hard to get that exact guy that fits your exact need and your number one priority. So address it in free agency. Control what you can control. And then if Michael Mayer's there at 28, or Robinson's there at 28, or whoever's there at 28 that you feel really good about, that's the highest on your board, well, then you feel much better taking him versus, we should probably take the 42nd best player on our board because it fits our biggest need, right tackle or offensive tackle. That's how I feel. So if I had to rank the Bengals offseason needs, offensive line, it's still there. And whether it's an offensive tackle, you could certainly say guard. You want depth at that, both guard spots. But because you don't know if Max Sharping's going to be back, he's free agent. But to me, right tackle, biggest need by far. Tight end is right there. They need to address it. And I think you address it in both the draft and in free agency. Cornerback up there, defensive line up there. Linebacker could be a need, certainly, but it's lower on my priority list. And then running back is a need. They need to get some younger blood in there. Right now, I'm not sure where they go because Travion Williams and Samaje Perine are free agents to be. We've talked about Joe Mixon's future. Running back is certainly on the list, as is speed at wide receiver. So If I had to rank them, I guess it would be in that order. But I really expect the Bengals to address all of those spots this offseason, whether it's free agency, whether it's the draft. And it's going to be fun to see how they do it. This is just kind of a need primer because we're going to start to dive into specific players, specific positions, more in depth. We're going to have guests on, all of those things. And so I figured I would do one primer that gets you ready, that gives you my mindset, some of the strategy I think that's going to be involved in this offseason. Because the Bengals, they're one of the best teams in the NFL. And the Bengals, well, they have needs. And they're going to start to address them in a few weeks when free agency kicks off. Make sure you check out all of our free agency previews of all the Bengals players. Jermaine Pratt coming later this week. Von Bell already in the hopper for you. Jesse Bates and many others. Hayden Hurst. I know people wonder about his future. Plus, I'll be doing that Robinson video. Should the Bengals consider a running back in the first round? We will discuss that on a video coming to your feed very soon right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. It's scheduled for Thursday. So stay tuned for that. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell. And for Andrew Fox Miller, our channel coordinator, I'm James Rapien, signing off for now on CBT, Cincinnati Bengals Talk.